We start in Colombia, where students protesting for an improved higher education budget have been met with heavy police repression. Right, police reportedly attacked protesters with tear gas canisters, batons, and even their fists. The students demonstrated throughout the day and were later joined by indigenous groups and workers' unions who are against President Ivan Day's tax reform, which seeks to tax basic goods. Our correspondent in Bogota, Tatiana Potella, has documented a police officer attacking one student in the demonstration. Now, the footage shows the police officer assaulting the protester. The incident occurred north of the capital, Bogota. Social organizations in Chile have protested the government's violent crackdown against the Mapuche people that left one man dead on Wednesday. The police used water cannons and tear gas against the demonstrators to push back around 100 protesters outside the government headquarters. Social leaders are calling on citizens to take action against state persecution as well as the continued appropriation of their lands. President Sebastian Pinera pledged an investigation into the police regarding the murder of the young Mapuche activists.
Since 1990, we have had many Mapuche deaths across all governments. There is a systematic logic by all sectors of the right wing that sides with landowners and dictates that if a Mapuche does not bend to the will of the state, they will be killed.
We need all unions to call on a mass demonstration across the entire country. We need to fight against the repression the Mapuche face. They must be allowed to be self-governed. Their lands must be demilitarized and the Jungle Command must be disbanded.
And the Interior Minister, Andres Chadwick, has also pledged to investigate the case. Social organizations want the operations carried out by Jungle Command in the south of the country to end.
Right now, our main commitment, and we are focusing on this, is to clarify the facts as soon as possible, in a total and complete way.
Our correspondent in Santiago, Tiare Valenzuela, brings us more on this case.
Camilo Catrillanca was shot in the head by police forces inside Mapuche territories. According to the Interior Minister, Andres Chadwick, the police operation was trying to prevent Mapuche community members from committing violent acts. They accused Mapuche people of stealing 3 vehicles from residents of a town nearby. And as a result, they deployed an operation with more than 300 security forces and 2 helicopters to fight over the community of Temucucuy. Social organizations questioned the real reason behind the operation and made a call to end the criminalization of protest, as well as of police repression and violence against the Mapuche people.
A migrant walking with the caravan to the United States has died of heat stroke. Michel Piaz was attempting to cross the border through the Arizona desert with his uncle by his side. Border patrol agents tried to get to Piaz after his uncle called 911, but they were unable to find him before he died. Both had walked 3,000 kilometers from Guatemala.
It's a great loss for the family because he was the one supporting the family. He was everything to the family and he wanted to give my parents and my family a better life. He made a lot of sacrifice to go over there. We want over to go there.
More than 1,700 people traveling with the migrant caravan have arrived so far to the border city of Tijuana. Now they're waiting in shelters and hope that the U.S. government will grant them asylum or at least refugee status. However, to do so with the new federal rules, migrants will have to enter the U.S. through official ports. And as more and more people from the migrant caravan approaches Tijuana, residents of the city shared mixed feelings about the reinforcement of security at the border fence.
Many people disagree, but they are still human beings. They have to live somewhere.
Unfortunately, it is necessary. The reasons are regrettable and all that, but everyone defends what's theirs. That's it.
Among those migrants who arrived at El Chaparral, the port of entry in Tijuana, are 17 members of the LGBT community. They have added their names to a list that will be used by U.S. immigration officials to hear individual requests for political asylum. The small group broke off from the main caravan days ago and have reportedly face discrimination throughout their journey.
We come in peace. We want to do things correctly. We don't want to jump over walls. We don't want to violate US law. We are a group of around 78 people from the sexually diverse community. Our objective today is to request our numbers so that maybe within 2 or 3 weeks we know how long it'll take to get a number. To request political asylum beforehand, to ask government of the United States to please help us, to open their doors, because we are not people who cause trouble. We come fleeing from trouble. We come fleeing from discrimination. We come fleeing from the violence in Honduras and Central America.
Our correspondent in Tijuana, Alina Duarte, tells us more about this situation.
Específicamente la zona norte, que valga la pena decirlo.
We are right now in the northern part of Tijuana, considered the most dangerous part of the city, here on the border with the U.S. A shelter has been set up in a sports center for Central American migrants. More than 1,300 people have arrived so far to the city, but buses are still coming, so the numbers will likely increase. These families, whose members are young and old, have decided to seek asylum. Authorities say that there are more than 2,000 applications awaiting processing, so it could take more than 2 months to process all these applications. President Donald Trump has said on several occasions that there were a lot of criminals in the caravan. He has even said that they were a left group funded by Venezuela. So far, we all have seen, though, is families fleeing from violence in their homeland, simply wanting to give their children, their families, a better life. The U.S. Defense Secretary has already visited the bordering city in Texas to see if the U.S. troops are organized. There are almost 6,000 troops manning the border.
We'll take a short break now. More news in 8 minutes.
Our actions have an impact on the environment. It's our responsibility to change for the sake of our planet. Let's be part of this transition. Watch, preserve, and protect your Green Zone. Wednesdays, only on Telesur. Telesur brings you special interviews with social and political personalities. Monday, from Washington. Tuesday, from Mexico. Wednesday, from Caracas. Thursday, from Quito. Friday, from Havana. Analysis about our continent's reality. Weekdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. Peru's public prosecutor has opened a new investigation against the former president, Alan Garcia, for alleged money laundering linked to the Odebrecht case. Garcia has been questioned at the public prosecutor's offices for the Lima Metro case, in which Odebrecht delivered around $24 million in bribes. The former president has been banned from leaving the country. Small groups of demonstrators in support of and against Garcia gathered outside the public ministry. So let's take a deeper look at the case in this report.
Once again, former President Alan Garcia went to the prosecutor's office to be questioned. But this time it wasn't as a witness, it was as a suspect.
There has been no questioning, because once again it was suspended. Nothing else. Thank you.
Garcia is being investigated over government concessions to Odebrecht for the metro construction project, in which he allegedly took bribes from the company. Odebrecht's executives even admitted to paying $24 million in bribes.
Garcia not only showed interest in selecting trusted officials to work in the ministry so they could facilitate the project, but he was also directing things behind the scenes to favor Odebrecht with Lima's metro.
The former anti-corruption ombudsman investigated the case and alleged that Odebrecht paid off Garcia.
One of the ways they received bribes was by making them look legitimate, by taking up percentages of real payments and then fabricating receipts, making it all look legal.
Although Garcia denies any knowledge of bribes at his level, which 85% of Peruvians don't believe according to polls, he admits mid-level staff may have been imprisoned for bribery.
They have all been linked to corruption. There is clear evidence he's dirty.
Throw him in jail. It's as simple as that. That's what he deserves for how much he hurt our country.
The prosecutor's office has asked the judiciary to ban him from leaving the country so he doesn't escape justice.
Staying in Peru, a confrontation occurred between opposing demonstrators over gender education reform. LGBT activists clashed with protesters from the Catholic Church before security forces arrived. Critics from the church accused the authorities of promoting homosexuality. Argentina is commemorating the first year after the disappearance of the Ara San Juan submarine, with relatives urging that the search continue. President Mauricio Macri headed a tribute ceremony in Mar del Plata, the place where the relatives of the 44 missing crew members still gather to demand answers. They also want the authorities to be held responsible for the disaster.
What can I do? I'm disappointed by what the president has said. He said they are to look for the sub, but with what? Our Navy doesn't have anything.
Since the More Doctors medical program began in Brazil in 2013, nearly 20,000 Cuban doctors have helped vulnerable persons living in remote areas. However, Cuba has withdrawn the program after some critical comments from President-elect Jair Bolsonaro.
These Cuban doctors are returning to Cuba after working in the most remote and deprived areas of Brazil for the last 3 years. They were part of the More Doctors program that started during the government of Dilma Rousseff in 2013. However, there will be no longer any more doctors to relieve them of their duties. Cuba has decided not to continue with the project after Jair Bolsonaro announced he would impose new conditions. From January next year, Cuban doctors would have to be paid by Brazil, putting an end to Cuba receiving a bulk of the salaries. And doctors will have to renew their medical licenses in the country.
Our health ministry has a lot of dignity, which we share. I don't think Brazil should set conditions for us to carry out our work, or even cast doubt on our qualifications and professionalism. I also feel sad for the millions of Brazilian people that will suffer due to these new limitations.
Dr. Dalia Vasquez, who now works in a clinic in Cuba's capital of Havana, was one of the first Cuban doctors that went to Brazil 5 years ago as part of the program. She explains that one of the challenges she first faced was to win the trust of the patient because they often knew very little about Cuba.
The lack of knowledge is incredible, not only of Cuban medicine, but of Cuba as a whole. I think they learn about us, about Cuban doctors. We saved a lot of lives in the most remote areas.
In 5 years, nearly 20,000 Cuban doctors attended to more than 100 million Brazilian people in over 3,000 municipalities.
More than 8,000 doctors that are now in Brazil will come back to Cuba and will join our hospitals and clinics with the same integrity they left to fulfill this task.
For 55 years, Cuba's medical profession has had a presence in 164 countries. Currently, Cuba's doctors are in 67 countries of all 5 continents.
Regional leaders are discussing matters such as growth, development, and stronger international cooperation at the 26th Ibo-America Summit in Guatemala. Heads of state and government leaders from Spain, Portugal, and Latin America believe that multilateralism is the way forward. They also agree that raising economic standards is the key to securing Ibo-America's future. The two-day summit is aimed at building closer cooperation ties.
What we need to have is inclusive development. We need sustainable development. This is a lesson that we have to take from the economic crisis we are going through, even what we have to do with economic growth and the pillars of them development. I believe in a multilateral order for cooperation and collaboration, for a more shared effort than what has been done in the past. We have to move forward to narrow inequality and to open up opportunities for a global society, regardless of where that be.
Bolivian President Evo Morales has been awarded a Doctor Honoris Causa by the Guatemalan University of San Carlos. Morales has received his honor in recognition of his defense of social movements and indigenous people. The Bolivian president is in Guatemala. He's attending the 26th Ibo-American Summit. And he also met with the indigenous leader and Nobel Peace Prize laureate, Rigoberta Menchú.
This honorary degree is not for me, but for social movement in Bolivia. I will not achieve it without my indigenous brothers in Guatemala, brothers of the social movement, the labor movement, of all the social sectors. When people join forces, nothing is impossible.
The president of El Salvador, Salvador Sanchez Cerén, has launched a new national policy for indigenous people. It's a plan that will help a sector within the society that has historically been excluded.
With an ancestral ceremony, the Nahuatl, Pipil, Lenca, and Cacahuira indigenous peoples celebrate the announcement of a public policy that will work to enforce their economic, social, and cultural rights.
This is the starting point to build, little by little, a solid pyramid, so to speak, for our rights.
In a special event at the presidential palace, President Salvador Sanchez Cerén gave the document to indigenous representatives. This happened after talks with different organizations of indigenous people and state institutions. The policy has strategies to improve social, cultural, economic, and environmental issues.
This is one of the most important legal actions in the history of El Salvador because it consolidates the end of centuries of exclusion for this noble and brave sector of our country. I express my respect to all indigenous communities and organizations and of their success, a product of their effort and tenacity.
Since June 2014, indigenous people in the country have been officially recognized, and now they are launching programs to revive their language, traditions, and ancestral cultures. The identity of Native people and their link to Mother Earth has influenced strategies for sustainability in the use of natural resources.
I will demand that everyone who was there to receive this document, and to the current and coming governments, to fulfill this policy, to not to keep this document in a drawer, because it has taken a lot of sacrifice to get to this point. We've gone hungry for too long.
El Salvador is a multi-ethnic state, and now it has made a compromise to respect and to strengthen cultural diversity and people's rights. For this reason, the intersectional group of indigenous peoples has been created. It will monitor the fulfillment of this national policy.
A group of Chilean scientists have created the first version of a prototype of a photosynthetic skin. The artificial skin is made from microalgae, and it uses photosynthesis to oxygenate the tissue and allow it to regenerate. The research took 7 years to develop and could be used for the treatment of serious tissue or organ damage. The first clinical test in humans will begin in the country in a few weeks. We'll take another short break now, but more news in a few. Welcome back. Malawian and Tanzanian soldiers have been killed in the Democratic Republic of Congo during an offensive on a militia group east of the country. The soldiers were on a United Nations peacekeeping mission in the country. Both the Malawian government and the United Nations have confirmed the incident. The UN said the soldiers died during a joint operation between its peacekeepers and the Congolese military during against a Ugandan rebel group. And clashes have erupted in Guinea's capital of Conakry after a protest by opposition supporters. Groups of young people threw stones at the police, who responded with tear gas. The march was aimed at denouncing violence committed by security forces. They say at least 100 Guinean citizens have been murdered by the defense and security forces.
You know why we are marching, because we are in a country where freedoms are being violated. We are in a country where laws are being violated. We are in a country where the government doesn't respect its agreements.
A man in South Africa has been sentenced to life in prison accused of rape. 36-year-old Thulasisiwe Dlamini was caught red-handed by police officers at a graveyard in the city of Durban. He had been robbing a 53-year-old woman after he had raped her. Police said the man drove the woman to the graveyard after offering her a lift. The language of coding has become the main tool for the South African youth to plug into the future. Primary school teams competed against each other armed with basic coding blocks, inventor kits and laptops. They belong to a coding club that is spreading across the country. In a country where over 50% of young people are unemployed, coding clubs also boost the chances of students finding a job when they graduate.
Since education is changing, kids, they need to move with the dynamics of education, and education is now taking, programming is the way forward. So we also need to prepare the kids as they move forward into the fourth industrial revolution of education.
I hope that I can be able to invent new things in the world and help people who are sick and born premature and other things.
And Somalia is holding its first boxing tournament after 40 years. After years of conflict, fans hope that this competition is a positive sign of the country's recovery. Organizers say that the increase of security and the improvement of the political situation made them launch the event. The athletes hope to see more youth participating in the sport. And Morocco has inaugurated the first high-speed runway in Africa. King Mohammed VI opened the 200-kilometer runway that runs through Morocco, connecting the cities of Tangier and Kenitra. He was joined by the French President Emmanuel Macron, as the high-velocity line has been built with the support of France's National Railway Company. Now let's take a look at some of the other stories making headlines around the world.
The political turmoil continues in Sri Lanka. Now the national parliament has erupted into a brawl as some MPs that protested against the motion of no confidence passed against newly appointed Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa. President Maithripala Sirisena dissolved parliament last week and ordered elections, but the Supreme Court suspended that decree. Thousands of people in the Czech Republic have protested against Prime Minister Andrej Babiš after rumors emerged that he sent his son abroad to avoid a fraud inquiry. Babiš is facing criminal charges over an alleged European Union subsidy fraud, as well as allegations that he collaborated with the secret police in the 1980s when the country was under Moscow's control. He denies any wrongdoing and insists that the inquiry is a plot to force him out of politics.
The ideal solution would be a resignation of the entire government, not only Babiš. I think the Slovak way with the old Prime Minister replaced by Peter Pellegrini is no solution. I'd advocate early elections if there's no other way out.
A relative calm was felt in Yemen's rebel-held port city of Hodeida. Citizens headed to the beach and market during a lull after 2 weeks of intense fighting between the Iran-backed Houthi rebels and the pro-government alliance led by Saudi Arabia. Residents still fear a siege of the city, where airstrikes have left entire neighborhoods destroyed. The Saudi-led coalition continues to block the port.
We end with news that India's meteorological department has issued a warning for residents in the southern state of Tamil Nadu ahead of the cyclone Gaza, actually. Locals have been advised to stock up on water and food supplies for the next few days as heavier rainfall is expected. Rescue forces, including the Navy, the Coast Guard, and disaster response agents are on high alert. Well, that has brought us to the end of this news brief. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at tellusyourenglish.net. And for our viewers in Africa, we are on Starstat channel 461 if you're in South Africa, and channel 539 if you're in Nigeria. Join us on social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Tells You English. I'm Sani Gray. Thank you for watching.